Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It is brought to you today by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher is here to talk some football. This time of the year, Moshe, I commented earlier in the show in the opening segment how this is like a cesspool of rumors that start, right? This is like the season of gotta find things to talk about. Let me throw stuff out there. So how much do we take into account of that when you hear a lot of stuff that starts to come out between February 22nd and March the 16th?
A lot. By the way, this is also the time of the year where you start to do some crazy things like Google what certain cleanses are and what they entail, because a famous quarterback says he went on a 12-day one.
Yeah.
So that's when you really know your guts deep, no pun intended, into the silly season there. But no, I mean,
well done.
I am a believer in where there's smoke, where there's fire, but I also am a believer in just my own experiences. I think Adam Kaplan would tell you this. I think a lot of good reporters would tell you they don't report everything they're told because, A, you try to get as much confirmation on things as possible. Sometimes you're told or you hear things that don't add up and you want more information, or you don't. You shouldn't go forward with something that you're skeptical about, or if you think someone's maybe trying to manipulate you. But not everybody follows that, right? And all it takes is one or two people to just kind of blindly put something out there that they were told to go viral or to get a lot of attention. So you have to keep that in mind as well.
How much, you talk about where there's smoke, there's fire, right? Obviously, the Russell Wilson stuff, why do you think that continues to surround Philadelphia? Why do you think the Russell Wilson stuff continues to surround the NFL? I mean, he has made no formal announcement that he wants to be traded, right? So why do you think that keeps on coming out?
Well, I think that part of it is because people lie. I mean, coaches lie, executives lie. People say one thing all the time, leave themselves wiggle room, and then another thing happens. We've seen that a billion times, both in Philadelphia and around the league. And so when there's still enough smoke to be fire, you don't always just trust the company line.
So Russell Wilson, obviously, he's been there 10 years. He hasn't said, hey,
right.
I want out. The team obviously wasn't that good last year. Pete Carroll comes back. I don't know. Do you put two and two together and say where there's smoke, there's fire, that Russell Wilson wants out of there? Do you expect Wilson to be a guy that will be on the move? I mean, the odds for Philadelphia went from 40-1, Moshe, one of the worst odds, to one of the best odds now. I mean, I think it was plus 400 this morning that he would be traded to Philadelphia. So all of a sudden, it just took this huge shift.
Yeah, and some of that is hard to say whether a sports book is just trying to make some money at the moment, capitalize on the market. Who knows? I don't know why the odds changed like that. But look, I think the other part of this whole conversation is you're dealing with human beings, and human beings sometimes wake up and feel differently today than they did the day before. So I think Russell Wilson's been the kind of guy, at least publicly, to make you wonder, like, what is his truest intention? What's his real feeling about what's going on, where he's at? I think the quarterback position in general, you see guys kind of be very mercurial about. I mean, you saw what Kyler Murray did, right? I mean, he just completely scrubbed his entire social media of the Cardinals. So that was clearly done intentionally and with a statement. And, we'll see. It doesn't mean he's going to be leaving, but that's part of the trail of crumbs that guys used to leave. And certainly, whereas Russell has come out and said certain things in the past, he has said other things. And so you just never know if it's a mind-changing thing or what conversations have taken place behind closed doors. And things could be very fine now, but they could have a meeting or a draft could happen, and Russ may not like the draft picks and all of a sudden feel differently. You just never know. You're dealing with human beings.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like, I definitely feel like, see, the part that doesn't add up for me, Jeff, is Pete Carroll being 70 years old and still being the coach. You would think if Wilson said, look, I don't want to be here, or I want to be, if you guys can find a trade, I'd like to be traded, that the team wouldn't have got together with, like, does Pete Carroll want to start over from scratch with another quarterback? That's why I feel like them retaining Carroll kind of indicates to me that they're all on the same page here. Like, if there was any crack, wouldn't Carroll or the organization say, let's get a new coach, let's start over, Pete kind of walk away on his own? Don't you feel like that's part of it?
I would assume so. But again, what Russell has told the Seahawks then compared to what he might tell them next week. Think about the Eagles. I know they didn't fire Doug Peterson just to keep Carson Wentz, obviously, clearly. But if they had, right, which a lot of people thought they were doing, firing Doug to make Carson happier,
yeah,
it wouldn't have worked, right? So sometimes you think you know what a guy's thinking, and you react accordingly. Who was in the NBA? Remember when LeBron James said, "Man, do I love that Shabazz Napier," and then the Miami Heat drafted him, I think, in the first round, and he bolted anyway. So it just goes to show you, human beings, they say one thing, but then their attitudes and what they do, and maybe a week or two later they feel differently. I think for the Seahawks, as much as Russell Wilson is the face of their franchise, the face of their last 10 to 12 years, their turnaround, their relevance was the hiring of Pete Carroll. They made it to the playoffs even before Russell Wilson got there. I think they made it to the playoffs as an under 500 team, but then they won a game, right? That was the big Marshawn Lynch game, I think, against New Orleans, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
So you can understand why Seattle wants to retain Pete Carroll as badly as Russell Wilson or anybody, because he was there from the start of it.
Yeah, I mean, there had been some murmurs. He's 70. They didn't make the playoffs this year, and the team kind of seems like it's going into a rebuilding kind of mode here, which is why Wilson might not want to go back, is that the team seems to be kind of stuck in limbo. Do you have a 70-year-old coach being the guy that leads you out of limbo? That's the connection.
They shouldn't be rebuilding mindset. I mean, they've made a very aggressive trade. Was it last year or before, to get the safety from the Jets, Adams? I mean, they have DK Metcalf, they have Tyler Lockett, they've got Bobby Wagner. I mean, they're not far from. I mean, they didn't make the playoffs because Russell Wilson got hurt and he struggled a little bit when he came back. Wound up finishing him better, but they really didn't make the playoffs because they haven't drafted very well on the offensive line and defensive line in the last few years. But they're just a couple of players away from just being a very competitive team again.
Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. So Pro Football Focus has 15 trades this offseason.
Just 15, huh?
To watch out for, right? And the first one on the list, number 1, Seattle trades Russell Wilson to Philadelphia. These are the terms. The Eagles send a first-round pick this year, a third-round pick this year, and a first-round pick next year for Russell Wilson. That doesn't sound like all that much.
Well, it doesn't. That sounds like the Eagles aren't really bidding against a whole lot of people for Russell Wilson. So, sounds like a good deal. I mean, I think the Eagles, if they could do that, would do it.
I would agree. So the question really keeps coming up about getting a quarterback. They
didn't even put Jalen Hurts in there.
That's what I found to be weird. Is wouldn't you send them back Hurts so that because what are they going to go with? What are they going to play? Geno Smith or Jacob Eason?
Right. No, that's surprising because now that gives the Eagles even more ammunition to be able to trade Jalen Hurts for whatever they can get and get more and recoup some of the draft bounty that they're going to lose in trading for Russell Wilson.
Right.
But,
so to me, that deal's a no-brainer. The one that becomes the question is if you're sending 2 or possibly 3 first-round picks to bring in, forget Russell Wilson, any quarterback, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, insert veteran quarterback here. If I'm giving up multiple first-round picks this year, if I'm giving up one this year, one next year, I feel like that's a win for me.
I would think so. Absolutely. Because you get to have the best of both worlds. You get to bring in an elite quarterback, and you still have 2 other first-round picks this year that you get to use.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good.
Yeah. What is your take on you like Trubisky at all?
To do what?
Well, I mean, he was a quarterback who took the Bears to the playoffs, which not many quarterbacks could say. Now, I know he was highly criticized, but he didn't have a lot of weapons, not a great offense out there. Would he be a guy that would be intriguing to take a shot on? He was the second pick of the draft.
No,
he had
only as a backup, a backup project, not as my starter.
I mean, he was the second pick of the draft. He had some skill set.
Yeah, well, Jalen Hurts has some skill set. I mean, I don't. Again, we've talked about what should the Eagles do if it's not Jalen Hurts, or what should they do with Jalen Hurts? Well, they should be in relentless pursuit of an elite quarterback, and either they think Jalen Hurts is going to become that, so they don't have to get somebody, or they have the opportunity to get somebody. Getting someone who's on the same level, or someone like Jimmy Garoppolo, who you can argue is a better quarterback as far as a better passer. Better quarterback, but not necessarily an elite quarterback, that doesn't really do much for you unless you're getting – because the money you're going to have to pay and the draft capital or whatever you'd have to give up is not worth it because you're not getting a guaranteed elite quarterback.
He's a free agent, Trubisky. That's why I asked. I mean,
Trubisky, yeah. But no, I mean, I just don't think you're upgrading yourself.
There was some talk. There was some talk about the Giants signing him to back up or compete with Daniel Jones because of the Bills connection.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah. We've seen that a lot. Quite often you see a guy, a coach take a job and then take some familiar guys with him. I mean, Chase Daniel came with Doug Peterson for that reason and that reason alone. Yeah. So, and the Eagles paid a lot of money for it. So I would say that that's a similar situation there. Although I would say probably Mitch gives you more upside because they have uncertainty about Daniel Jones, but I can't imagine that they feel that Mitchell Trubisky is a guaranteed to be a really good option for them going forward.
Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast, one of the topics you guys discussed on the latest is Miles Sanders. 1 year left on the deal. Is he a guy that Howie Roseman would be on the phone with on draft night? Or be on the phone for, I should say, not calling him just to ask him how he's doing, but possibly seeing what kind of offers out there.
Yeah, I would think his name will come up in conversations, but the trick is, and the real key is that he only has a year left on his deal. So if you want Miles Sanders and you're going to trade for him, you're probably not going to give up great value knowing that you only have him for 1 year. And you're very unlikely to put the franchise tag on him at the running back position. So it really is just 1 year. So you're probably not going to give up very much. And then, so if you're Howie Roseman and you may not love Miles and you may not think you may have already decided you're not giving him an extension until after this year and make him prove it or not prove it, you're still not going to accept a fourth or a fifth or a sixth, I would think, for a guy who can at least for 1 year give you a pretty good option in the running game, right? I mean, so you want the good value. Plus, if he has a good year and he walks and signs a big contract somewhere else, you get a pretty good comp pick or at least get help in the comp pick formula. And all that will tie in. So I can't imagine how he would really trade Miles for anything, unless it's a higher than a 4 or a conditional 4 that can become a 3. And I don't know that anybody's going to want to give that up for 1 year of Miles Sanders.
Yeah, but you still look – you probably – see, running back is interesting, right? Because it feels like you use these guys for their first contract and then just move on and get to the next one. Because Jordan Howard is a free agent, so is Boston Scott, though. Yeah.
I mean, the whole running game is, as we talked about on the podcast, is a real – it's going to be fascinating to see as the Eagles go forward. A, if they feel like they need the same kind of running game as they had last year, if that's their mindset is to build another dominant, historic running game, or if they want to open it up the offense a little bit. And B, do they see Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, Miles Sanders as fungible? In other words, we have a great offensive line. Should we just draft some running backs in the 4th and the 5th round, or maybe sign another? I mean, we said this on the podcast. Jordan Howard has literally never had interest from anybody else except for the Eagles, and except for 1 week where the Dolphins thought they were going to pour a lot of money into him and then releasing him, right, 3 weeks into the year. So Jordan Howard even said he was almost retired because nobody else wanted to give him a job. So you can let Jordan Howard out there and dangle him out until August. He may not sign with anybody, and just bring him back on a 1-year deal if you want. So they have options, and honestly, they could just remake the whole running game. And as long as they have the same offensive line, I think they're pretty confident that they can make some good things happen with their running backs. And of course, Kenneth Gainwell, I'm sure, will play a bigger role next year going forward too.
As we take a look at some of the guys, what do you think are they just going to let Nelson walk? Do they want him back? Do they want to let him play? Because last year Nelson was on the market for a while, couldn't get a job. Finally, Philly, hey, the story of last offseason, Moshe, was who's going to be that other corner. Mm-hmm. Nelson's name came up essentially for 2 months until finally nobody else wanted him, and he had to take the Eagles job. So he didn't have a great year. Do you think there's a market for him, and would Philly want him back?
We had Nelson on our show about midway through the season on Inside the Birds TV, and Nelson, has a I don't want to say, I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but he has a high opinion of himself. He believes he's a starting cornerback in the NFL. So and you saw that was represented in his actions. He waited a long time to sign. And why did he sign with the Eagles? It wasn't for great money. It was because he knew he would start because they had no better options. So what if you're Nelson and your agent, and Nelson's agent, Josh Arnold, I believe, you want to talk to Howie at the Combine next week and say, what are you doing at the cornerback spot? And what are you willing to do with Steven Nelson? And if Howie says, we'd like to have Steven Nelson back on a 1-year deal, then that sounds the alarm that the Eagles probably want to draft at corner. They probably want to get a guy really high to build their future around. And if they do that, they're going to want to start him if he's good enough. And so now if you're Steven Nelson, you're thinking, well, they're not going to move me to the slot, even though he's a pretty good slot corner, because Avonte Maddox is entrenched there. So if they want me to sign a 1-year deal and they draft a corner and that corner starts, I literally am not getting on the field. That's not what I'm in this for. If I'm going to sign a 1-year deal, I'm going to do what I did last year and sign it with a team that's really deficient at corner where I know I can start. And I may have to wait until after free agency and the draft to do that. So I imagine the origins of all of this will start next week in Indianapolis when Howie and Josh Arnold have an illegal conversation in some back of a restaurant somewhere. But really, honestly, so that's the predicament Steven Nelson's in. He wants to start, so I can't imagine. The only way I can see him re-signing with the Eagles early is if they're offering him multiple years and the type of money that says you're definitely a starter for us. But I can't imagine as we sit here today that they're going to do that.
Agree. Alex Singleton, also a free agent, right? So restricted or unrestricted?
He is a restricted free agent. And I always think, restricted free agent, low tender, it's not that much money. It's $1.5 million to $2 million, whatever, you should get it. But now when you really rationalize it, where is Alex Singleton on their totem pole? You kind of get the feeling that they're going to make a move at linebacker this year, maybe even 2, meaning draft and free agency. So that's 2 guys right there. They have TJ Edwards, who is their best run stopping linebacker. That's a third, he's on the team. And then Davion Taylor, they have high expectations for. He's going to come back from the injury. You can't count on him, but he's still in your top 4. So now are you going to pay Alex Singleton the $1.5 million to $2 million, whatever the low tender is, to be a 5th linebacker who might be your 4th? Because that's actually a lot of money for a guy who technically as a 4th or 5th linebacker is not a starter and is a special teams player mostly. Now, again, he has found his way onto the field anyway because of the Eagles situation at linebacker. But if you're Howie, you got to think, can I find myself another Alex Singleton? I got this guy as an undrafted guy out of Canada. I can probably do that. So he may find that for both Boston Scott and Alex Singleton, that while they've been good contributors, and when you play them, they seem to do more good than bad, that even the $1.5 million to $2 million as a low tender is outpriced for their spot on the totem pole.
Yeah, you wonder, Moshe, and I don't think this would be the case, but if the first linebacker snaps next year are taken by Edwards and Singleton.
I would think Edwards and Davion Taylor, or Edwards and whoever they see. The question is, Mike, do they go into this offseason thinking we're definitely playing TJ Edwards on first and second down, and what we really need to do is find an athletic, rangy linebacker to pair with Davion Taylor for our nickel, which we're going to be in 65% of the time? Or do they think they need a 3-down linebacker that's going to push TJ sort of to the bench only as a rundown, like a situational rundown guy and goal line guy. And then this 3-down linebacker is going to be able to give you coverage, but he's also going to be able to play on the line like Jannard Avery would do, like kind of a – so Anthony Barr's a free agent. Yeah, this is what Anthony Barr does. He's 30 years old now. He's probably not going to cost you as much as he did like 4 or 5 years ago. Is that somebody they target because of A, his familiarity with the scheme, and B, he has that multiple skill set that it seems Jonathan Gannon would like? Because Jonathan Gannon was literally using 3 guys to do one thing, right? He was using T.J. Edwards, and then he was using Jannard Avery as that on-the-line linebacker, and then he would use Singleton as his blitzer. So can he get 3 and 1, and do they look for that kind of guy the way they got Nigel Bradham for Jim Schwartz a couple of years in 2016, or do they sort of piecemeal it again? I think the whole philosophy of what they do at linebacker is yet to be seen.
Geoff Mosher, football at 4. Listen to the Inside the Birds podcast. The latest one is out. It dropped yesterday with more on these topics. Jordan Howard, safety, Alex Singleton, defensive end, off-season stuff. And, of course, the NFL free agent period opens up March 16th. Before you know it, it will be here. But until then, the cesspool will be circulating.
Every day. It churns every single day.
Yeah, man. All right, Jeff. Appreciate it, bud.
Hey, can I just tell everybody about the new show that starts tomorrow?
Oh, I didn't know about this new show that starts tomorrow.
It is The Intel with Greg Cosell. Will start tomorrow. It's a 10-week show. The first will drop tomorrow, 6 a.m. on the Inside the Birds platform. And his first 3 or 4 shows are geared toward looking at free agents, NFL free agents, and who will fit best for the Eagles. So tomorrow's show is going to focus on wide receivers and linebackers. We just talked about Anthony Barr. You should hear what Greg has to say about how he played last year and the fit there, and also a lot of wide receiver talk. So that'll be on our platform at 6 a.m. podcast only. It's not going to be podcast and YouTube from the start. Podcast only for the start of it.
Wherever you get your podcast, Inside the Birds, check that out. All right, Moshe, we will talk to you tomorrow, man.
Appreciate it, Mike. Talk to you tomorrow.
Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.